The United States of America did not invent the railroad, but no other country made better use of it. By the middle 1800s, a magic carpet of iron inched out across a young land. Pioneers dreamed of joining two mighty oceans and every growing city in between. Steel, sweat, and stone formed the building blocks of a great cross-country adventure. But it took a colorful cast of characters to set the adventure in motion. They were the visionary messengers of manifest destiny, and their motives varied as much as the terrain they conquered. Some sought wealth and glory. Others merely wanted to contribute to the common cause. Good and evil took their own routes as the visionaries behind the railroads blazed the way of the Iron Horse.
From its inception, the railroad in this country was identified with the origins of American democracy and the Republican values of the new nation. The B&O Railroad, the first formal railroad in America, had its first stone laid by Charles Carroll, the only surviving signer of the Declaration of Independence. So you have this combination of the legitimate origins of American democracy and the birth of this new technology, which was going to establish America as the industrial powerhouse that it would ultimately become and have a transforming effect on the entire continent.
Tracks were laid at a feverish rate. Locomotives chugged from city to city and beyond. Shiny new trains cut travel time between towns from days to mere hours, and anyone who had the fare could climb aboard.
There wasn't anything more exciting than seeing those locomotives pull into town. And what those locomotives pulled was all your communications, your newspapers, your packages, your mail, the things on store shelves, the food in your stores. It was the lifeline of every small town around America.
The rails were the tools of the people, but they required great amounts of money to build and operate. By 1850, railroads had become popular investments on Wall Street, but the public good was often the lowest priority of railroad promoters out to make a quick profit. Wall Street tycoons like Cornelius Vanderbilt, Jim Fisk, and Daniel Drew made national headlines as they fought for control of each other's rail lines. For the first time, the public witnessed the spectacle of big money fighting big money, of cutthroat competition among rail financiers, usually with the small investors' dollars at stake. Despite Wall Street's self-serving power plays, track crews and their steaming locomotives rolled west. They muscled their way through the Blue Ridge Mountains and Alleghenies into the Ohio Valley and beyond. Railroads carved their way into the frontier, sometimes before the settlers got there. The government wanted to expand settlement westward, so it offered railroads a deal.
What incentive could you provide a railroad builder or railroad financiers? Well, all the federal government had was the enormous public lands of the West. So it was believed to be a very, very good trade to exchange a small percentage of those public lands for the creation of these transportation arteries.
In 1850, the Illinois Central became the country's first land-grant railroad. It spanned Illinois, serving factories, farms, and towns.
In a part of the country where there wasn't much population and there wasn't much industry, people had the idea that if they build it, you would come. After the Illinois Central experience, the idea of the land grant became very popular. Out on the frontier, the land didn't have much value, so why not trade that land away to this industry which would give that land some value? And to people at the time, it seemed like a very straightforward thing to do.
Rail building stalled briefly in the fertile Mississippi Valley. Beyond it was the edge of the rugged North American interior, where arid and treeless plains rose to meet towering mountains. Each mile of track west of the Mississippi became costlier to build. But the California Gold Rush and later Nevada's Comstock Lode fueled a renewed urgency to link the coasts. The problem was getting Congress to decide just where to build the route.
The Civil War is what decides where the first transcontinental railroad is going to be built. Before the Civil War, there was actually a standoff in Congress. The Southern legislators and the Northern legislators simply couldn't agree on where the one big first transcontinental railroad would go. It's absolutely no accident that the Pacific Railroad Act, it comes in 1862, in the middle of the war when all the southern folks are out of Washington, D.C. And so the groundbreaking for the first transcontinental occurs even before the war is over.
Under the terms of the Pacific Railroad Act, Abraham Lincoln chartered the Union Pacific to blaze west beyond the Missouri River and into the Rockies. The new railroad's chief promoter and financier was a man named Thomas Durant. Durant knew far more about manipulating money in the stock market than making a railroad run, and the Union Pacific's early days were plagued with scandal and financial abuse.
Durant was a promoter, a financier, not a manager, not decisive, almost incapable of making explicit business decisions. He had almost no business being a railroad president.
Durant's strongest asset was his chief engineer, Major General Grenville M. Dodge.
Grenville Dodge had the toughest job on the Union Pacific Railroad because it fell to him to actually locate the line, to supervise the surveyors and the engineers who would actually figure out where the route would be and to make the estimates and do the budgeting for the actual construction work.
Grenville Dodge was a former military man who approached his assignment with military efficiency. By 1865, his railroad army enlisted Civil War veterans fresh from the battle lines and thousands of Irish who fled to America to escape poverty and famine. Hordes of workers forged on across the plains under Dodge's watchful eye and the UP's shaky finances. 1,600 miles away in California, the challenge to build the transcontinental railroad going east was geography. California's Sierra Nevada mountain range formed a seemingly impenetrable curtain of stone. But no mountain, even one made of the world's hardest granite, would stop a visionary pioneer with a burning dream. Theodore Judah was a brilliant civil engineer from upstate New York who helped build the Niagara Gorge Railroad. He and his wife Anna moved to California in 1855 to lay out and construct the Sacramento Valley Railroad, the first formal railway west of the Mississippi.
Judah was very familiar with the dream of manifest destiny, and he was very filled with his own sense of ability and aptitude as well. And looking from Sacramento east to the summit of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, he decided that he was the person with the skill and the ability to design a railroad that could be built from the Sacramento Valley over the Sierra Nevada and across Nevada and Utah to a connection with the east.
Judah's funding for this venture didn't equal his ambition. He needed support and found it from a group of men who became known as the Big Four.
He was able to interest 4 Sacramento merchants, Leland Stanford, Mark Hopkins, Collis Huntington, and Charles Crocker, to support his scheme. They founded a company called the Central Pacific Railroad of California, which provided survey financing for Theodore Judah and his wife Anna to perfect the route. Judah himself did the surveying work, and his wife Anna, who was very much his partner, actually drew the maps.
Together, Anna and Theodore Judah found the ideal route. Locals had nicknamed him Crazy Judah for his lofty dreams. He proved them wrong.
Just the fact that he was able to locate this railroad line over the mountain range is evidence enough of his competence in engineering. But he was also humorless, single-minded, focused on his own place in history and his own role in building this railroad. This put him in conflict with his partners, the Big Four, who were not so much concerned about the grand vision of building a railroad, but were interested in the business outcomes of the construction and operation of that railroad. They were more wrapped up in the finance and the mechanics of getting the railroad constructed than in the grand vision of linking California with the rest of the nation.
To the idealistic Judah, the Big Four were profit-hungry villains. He rapidly came to distrust his partners and was convinced they were only exploiting him and his ideas. Their disagreements grew into conflicts. By the late summer of 1863, it was clear someone had to go.
The Big Four told Theodore Judah that they would be happy to sell out for him if he could raise the funds to buy out their interest in the railroads. And they told him that they would be happy to buy him out as well if he was not happy with their management or the work they were doing.
That's all he needed to hear. Judah immediately booked passage back east to raise funds and buy out his tormentors. He sailed to Panama and was crossing the isthmus when he was bitten by a mosquito and contracted yellow fever. Judah made it to New York too sick and weak to court financiers. He died there in November alone, leaving others to see his dream of a great Trans-Sierra Railroad fulfilled.
After Judah's death, his wife Anna moved back to New York and spent the rest of her life ensuring that his memory would not be forgotten. She wrote extensively about his work, how he'd been wronged by history and by the Big Four, and how death had deprived him of the ability to take full credit for his great vision of a railroad to the Pacific coast.
Judah's pioneering work allowed the Transcontinental Railroad to be completed in only 6 years. On May 10, 1869, at Promontory Summit, Utah, the last spikes were placed and champagne flowed. 2 coasts, linked by 1 track, celebrated into the dawn. Pioneers like Grenville Dodge and Theodore Judah laid the foundation for America's first great industry, railroading. The captains of industry who would develop the land along the tracks were about to make history of their own. Certain kinds of men swung mauls at spikes or blasted tunnels out of sheer rock. Others dared to conceive and finance such endeavors. They were the rail barons.
Andrew Carnegie had a wonderful phrase. He said, "Pioneering doesn't pay." And that applies, I think, to the early railroads of the 19th century. Before the Civil War, a lot of the railroad entrepreneurs lost their shirts. It was a rough business. But after the Civil War, as the economy took off, railroads became the hottest stocks of all in the late 19th century. The railroad barons literally had a noose around the economy, or could direct the economy in ways that benefited on pocketbooks.
Some were greedy investors out to make a killing in the country's premier industry. Others bore a sincere desire to see their rail empires prosper and serve their passengers and shippers well.
Most of these individuals were builders and not wreckers. Certainly you could make that case even for the most hated man in America in the late 19th century, Jay Gould.
East Coast newspapers of the late 1800s loved to hate Jay Gould. He was a Wall Street financier who once battled Cornelius Vanderbilt over control of the Erie Railroad. He brazenly attempted to corner the American gold market, triggering the infamous Black Friday of 1869, and he targeted numerous companies for takeovers. Gould was the quintessential robber baron. He conquered, but not always with the intent to destroy. He attempted to modernize the Erie Railway. He saved the young Union Pacific from bankruptcy, and he turned Western Union Company into an early communications giant. Gould was a small, dark-haired man with piercing eyes and a reserved manner, too reserved for some.
He had a kind of sinister aura in that he was quiet. He seemed to be extremely secretive. But when we look at Gould's personal life, we find that he was an adoring husband, a wonderful father, a man who was committed to his church. He was not a rascal. He was a kind of quintessential Victorian father.
Some of the kindest public words directed at Gould came from the Union Pacific's chief engineer, Grenville Dodge. Appreciating Gould's support in expanding the Western rails, Dodge said, "There is no man who risked so much credit and so many millions and got so little in return as Jay Gould." Gould died of tuberculosis in 1892, a vilified and misunderstood man. Railroading had made him rich, but his progressive and frequently criticized business tactics also enriched the railroads he owned. Some barons deserved their bad reputations, like investor William H. Moore. He and his brother James experienced great success restructuring and creating companies like Diamond Match and Nabisco. But the brothers thoroughly decimated the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railway at the turn of the century. They sold too many shares of the railroad stock and invested too little of the money back into its operations. The Rock Island's finances were left in such ruins that it became one of the most frequently cited arguments for stringent government control of railroad finance. The Moore brothers represented all that was wrong about running a rail empire. But Big Jim Hill, as the Plains farmers called him, was everything that was right in a rail baron. History remembers him as the empire builder. Hill was neither a stock manipulator nor a plunderer. He was a hard-working businessman of Irish descent who saw endless possibilities in the northern plains and the lands beyond. He explored the wilderness in his middle 30s, seeking opportunity, and found it in the field of transportation. Hill first ran steamboats on the Red River, then a fuel company in St. Paul, Minnesota. But his fondest dream was to build a great railroad to the Pacific Northwest.
Hill, in the late 1870s, takes a woebegone property called the St. Paul and Pacific and uses that as the nucleus for what becomes the Great Northern Railway in the 1890s. This was his great adventure in life. He enjoyed inspecting the property, realizing that he needed to know what problems the company was confronting. So it wasn't unusual for James J. Hill to appear at the local depot and to chat informally with people that gathered.
Hill built his railroad to the highest standards and did it solely with private funds. He admonished careless employees for wasting as little as a single rail spike. But he also saw the bigger picture. Hill actively recruited Scandinavian immigrants to settle the land along his tracks that was so similar to their homeland. He transported feed and supplies for free during farm depression years. And he openly gave to charities of all types.
Hill certainly was public-spirited. There's no question about that. He was of the opinion that money spent on public betterments was money well invested. He may not have had a great sense of humor, but people who got to know him admired him.
James Hill was one of America's first great rail operators. When he retired from active duty in 1912, he proudly passed the reins of the Great Northern to his eldest son, Lewis. Hill died 4 years later. He left behind an enduring standard for how to best run a railroad and an inspiration for inventive visionaries in all walks of railroading. As America pushed west, railroads became the lifeblood of the country's social and economic expansion. Coal, steel, and manufacturing concerns were all tied together by rail. Moving the country's growing output demanded better, faster, and safer rail transportation. To fulfill these needs, a group of pioneering inventors would step forward. A significant safety hazard on the railroads involved joining the cars of a train together. A former Confederate officer named Eli Janney tackled the problem.
The link and pin coupling was lethal. Brakemen or switchmen could be caught between cars and lose fingers or arms or be crushed to death. He imagined an automatic coupler in the shape of a hand, which would clasp automatically as two cars came together. He whittled a model from a piece of wood, had it patented, and it was adopted as the national standard.
Speed was an advantage and a necessity for trains, but making them safely go faster depended on stopping them reliably. George Westinghouse, a New York-born inventor fascinated with electricity and railroading, understood this concept. He served in both the Army and the Navy during the Civil War and emerged from the services eager to make a name for himself. He did that by bringing trains to a screeching halt.
George Westinghouse did not invent the air brake, but he perfected a remarkable idea, and that was that the air pressure in the brake system could be used to charge up the system and then hold the brakes off. And if there was a failure of the air system or, on the other hand, a conscious reduction of the air pressure, then the brakes would come on. And this made one of the very first successful fail-safe devices in industry. A brake system that if there was a derailment or a leak in the hose, the brakes would come on. Also, the very smooth application of the air brakes meant, again, that longer and longer trains, well, trains 2 and 3 times as long, could be safely pulled.
After the Civil War, the rails held the promise of reuniting a country divided by its racial beliefs. Many African American inventors set out to claim their equality on the drafting board with pencil in hand. Engineer Elijah McCoy was one of them. The son of former slaves who escaped to Canada, McCoy loved solving problems and was curious about anything mechanical. That curiosity led him to engineering school in Scotland and then to the industrial outskirts of Detroit, Michigan in 1870. Despite his brilliance, he was denied work in his field of training and turned to the only employment opportunity open to him.
He took a job on the Michigan Central Railroad, where he worked initially as a fireman. During that work, he began to see problems with the way that locomotives were lubricated. And so he set about to have some practical ideas to ease the problems of stopping trains and going around and oiling the moving parts. What he patented in 1872 was the McCoy lubricator, the first of a number of lubricators that he would receive the patent on. And this led to his career as an inventor.
McCoy had a knack for getting to the core of any problem and an elegance in crafting a practical solution. His name became synonymous with quality on the rails.
As his fame spread, I should say the fame of the equipment itself spread, people soon decided that they didn't want cheap imitations. They wanted to know if that piece of equipment had the real McCoy lubricator. And many scholars believe that that term, the real McCoy, the saying that means the genuine article, the true item, came into American speech because of the popularity, durability, and respect for Elijah McCoy's lubricators.
McCoy profited from his inventions, but not nearly as much as the white investors who backed him. In 1873, McCoy married Mary Eleanora Delaney. She played a large role in directing his energy and the meager money he was earning towards public causes.
She herself was a vice president of the Federation of Michigan's Colored Women's Clubs, a suffragist. She was also a member of the AME Church. She had founded a home for indigent, aged black women, and a home, the McCoy Home, for black boys and girls. So it seems clear that she was very much a part of the philanthropy, if we can call it that McCoy developed and pursued in the black community. To him, invention was simply not just a way to make money, but it was a way to help refute the myths that harnessed the aspirations of African Americans.
Sadly, McCoy outlived his beloved Mary Eleanora by several years. She died in 1923, and her loss devastated him. He spent his twilight years alone. But even that couldn't douse McCoy's positive thinking spirit.
The writer George Edmund Haynes visited McCoy shortly before his death. And he found him in what we would today call, I guess, an old folks' home, essentially forgotten. Haynes writes that McCoy still had command of his faculties and he was in good humor, although he suffered much from not having received the riches that his inventions created for so many others. And he seemed, as Haynes mentioned, to be happy with everything else, that he had been, I think the word was, serviceable to America.
Another man's experience closely mirrored that of Elijah McCoy. Granville T. Woods was an Ohio inventor who many called the Black Edison. He was a self-taught mechanical and electrical wizard. Woods was born in 1856 in Columbus, where his formal education ended in the 6th grade. His classrooms became the mills, foundries, and railroads of his early employment.
The American Catholic Tribune of Cincinnati, Ohio, first called him the greatest inventor in the history of the colored race, and then the following year called him the greatest electrician in the world. Out of about 45 patents, Woods had 16 inventions clearly connected to railway. And of those, probably his best known are the induction telegraph and the synchronous multiplex railway telegraph.
In the days before radio, there was no practical way for dispatchers to remain in constant contact with the trains speeding through their districts, and moving trains couldn't readily communicate with each other. If a train stalled on the main line track or schedules became confused, horrible accidents could occur. Wood's design sent telegraph signals directly through the track itself, allowing for instant rail communication at any time. His invention saved many lives, but like Elijah McCoy, he didn't fully reap the rewards of his labor.
I think that what you would have found is a man who was frustrated, tremendously talented, but again, chafed at the limitations that racial discrimination put on his social progress and on his industrial advancement. He was jailed briefly for a time as a result of a criminal libel suit against the American Engineering Company because he claimed that they were stealing his inventions. But he did not have enough money to pursue the case, so he was jailed briefly. And I think that embittered him.
But this case was only a prelude to his David versus Goliath battle with Thomas Edison. Edison's respected and well-financed electrical manufacturing company supplied the railroads as well. He too was working on improved rail telegraphy and seeking patents.
It seems clear that Mr. Edison may have considered Woods' work close enough to his own to want to incorporate it into his empire. But Woods wasn't having that. And even after the two cases in which both inventors battled in court, and Woods was declared the true inventor, Edison went on to offer Woods a job in one of his companies, which Granville T. Woods declined, and went on inventing with his brother for several years.
New systems and devices allowed trains to travel faster and farther. They enabled the railroads to accomplish in 90 years what the Founding Fathers thought would take centuries. With the dawn of the 20th century nearing, America's great frontier was about to be declared closed. Making the American frontier accessible was a great achievement of public policy by the railroads. Investment and invention helped tame the 2 million square miles west of the Mississippi. A half-dozen separate rail lines linked the east with the west.
In 1893, the superintendent of the census reported that the frontier had ended. Although that is an interesting observation, technically it's not true. Certainly there were additional frontiers. Perhaps the most important was the Florida frontier that would not be developed until after the turn of the 20th century.
Taming the railroad's last frontier in Florida proved no less challenging than conquering the Wild West. Spongy swamps were as difficult to overcome as stubborn Sierra passes, and alligators were as threatening as the mountain grizzly bear. New York State was the home of many pioneering investors. One chose Florida as the site of his first rail venture. He was a wealthy oil tycoon named Henry Morrison Flagler.
I think Flagler was more than any individual, or maybe any other organization even, responsible for the development of Florida as we know it today.
Flagler found success beyond his wildest dreams as John D. Rockefeller's #2 man at the Standard Oil Company, but not before failing miserably in a salt-producing business, which cost him his life savings and left him deep in debt. He was a careful individual, but willingly took the risk if the opportunity was worth the investment. Henry Flagler initially came to northern Florida in the late 1870s with his first wife, Mary Harkness. Her health was failing, and doctors recommended the region's tropical warmth and humidity to aid her respiratory problems.
He was not at all impressed with Florida at that point, although he was visiting in St. Augustine, the oldest city in the United States. He felt like the services and the facilities were underdeveloped and was not impressed at all.
The pilgrimage to Florida didn't do his wife much good. She died 2 years later. But Flagler came to clearly see the business potential under Florida's blue skies. He concluded that he was the man to civilize this tropical frontier with tourism, land development, and a reliable railroad.
It's important to understand that tourism in the 19th century was something very different from tourism in the 20th century. In the 19th century, tourism was an option only for the people of means. The common individuals that make up the bulk of our society just didn't have the means or the mode of transportation that was affordable to make tourism a regular feature of their lives. When Flagler developed Florida, his intent was to make a series of luxury destinations that would attract his peer group to enjoy the benefits of the climate in Florida and the natural beauty.
The wealthy in Flagler's day traveled in finely appointed private rail cars, the forerunners to private jets. But trains traveling south beyond Georgia ran into trouble. Rail lines there were often poorly built and operated on different gauges or widths of track. The wheels on standard gauge cars from the north wouldn't fit the rails, and trains could proceed no further. Flagler realized that he must buy up, standardize, then expand these ragtag rail lines to successfully develop the Florida frontier. As he built southward, railroads and swamps weren't the only things he bought.
He generally, when he went into an area, would buy the newspaper in that area, mainly because he didn't want to see himself in the newspaper. He just didn't care for what the outcome might be, and wanted to keep his name sort of out of the public view. He would also, when he came into an area, generally build the water facilities or the churches or the electrical facilities. Those all, he felt like, were a benefit to his plans and a benefit to developing the local area and the population. He was very careful. He learned from his failure in developing a salt business that he needed to work with people who were very knowledgeable in their specialties and be very careful about his decisions.
Flagler frequently turned to people from his past to help him build his future. He employed noted architects from his Standard Oil days to help design and build his first Florida landmark. The luxury hotel Ponce de Leon stood tall and beautiful in the St. Augustine sun. It opened in 1888 and drew immediate favor with wealthy travelers. The great success of the Ponce de Leon motivated Flagler to keep expanding his Florida East Coast Railway further south. His only real competition was on the west side of the state, where businessman Henry Plant was extending rail lines along the Gulf Coast. The two men agreed not to encroach on each other's terrain, but it was Flagler's vision and his deep pockets which impacted Florida's economy the most. Mile after mile, the Florida East Coast Railway snaked deeper into the lush wilderness of southern Florida, and mile by mile it became more difficult to build. By the time he reached Palm Beach, Flagler's crews stood on the outskirts of the Everglades. The weather there was even warmer than in St. Augustine. And it's here that Flagler chose to build his home and his greatest luxury hotel.
Flagler meant to make Palm Beach a world-class, by today's terminology, a world-class resort. And to do that, he created the largest wooden structure in the world, his Hotel Royal Poinciana, 1,150 rooms, a fantastic resort. And to keep the peace on the island, he allowed a train to bring visitors in with their private rail cars. But he didn't allow automobiles on the island and didn't allow horses on the island. Everybody was transported either by foot, by bicycle, by what's sometimes called the wicker or wheelchair, But he wanted to create an enclave of just pure luxury where those who could afford could come in and really enjoy the climate of Florida, and in that he succeeded very dramatically.
Many people viewed Flagler favorably for all he had accomplished, but others viewed him with the same mistrust they had for villainous rail barons of the past. Some accused him of manipulating government agencies to gain favorable treatment. Others accused him of worse. Palm Beach was an island, and the workers lived in a ramshackle village at the island's edge, an eyesore called the Sticks. Flagler had reportedly thrown a party for the workers off the island when a fire broke out and burned the Sticks to the ground. Rumors started that Flagler was behind the burning, although the fire's origin remained a mystery.
Flagler was not immune to his critics, and in fact he had a great quote. "I don't know of anyone who's been successful, but that he has been compelled to pay some price for success. Many prices are paid, but there is one universal price that I have never known any successful man to escape, and that is the jealousy of many of the community in which he moves."
Public opinion didn't deter him from proceeding with his empire building. He'd blazed 300 miles into the Florida frontier, building lavish properties along the way. Flagler was now convinced that his destiny was to build a railroad beyond the Miami River to the deep water port of Key West. His challenge was to span the 150-mile length of the Florida Keys, half of which was water. He called the project the Oversea Railway.
By the time Flagler had determined he was going to take the railway system all the way to Key West, something that from an engineering standpoint seemed nearly impossible, he was in his 70s, and he devoted almost 2 decades to development of the east coast of Florida already. And the decision to go to Key West would mean at least another decade of effort, making it a 3-decade endeavor and putting him into his 80s. But Flagler was determined to reach Key West with his railway system, and I think in many ways that's what kept him alive.
Flagler knew the risks in challenging the ocean, but was willing to face them. He surmounted complex engineering hurdles and weathered 7 hurricanes, which threatened to destroy his tracks. Dozens of workers died in the process. But in 1912, the first locomotive steamed into Key West. Flagler's place in history as Florida's great developer was secure.
I think what drove Flagler was business and building and accomplishment. He wanted to build things that would last, but he consistently refused to have his name attached to the names of cities or buildings. It was about making a lasting difference, but not necessarily about leaving a legacy with his name on it. And I might add, that's one of the reasons we don't know Flagler as well as he deserves to be known for as much as he accomplished. He really tried to take second seat to the actual accomplishment rather than the recognition for the accomplishment.
Henry Flagler died in 1913 at the age of 83. He built and operated his dream railroad as he saw fit. But the onset of World War I brought never-before-seen government regulation of the rails, and with it, the end of the great rail baron era. In the 1850s, government turned to the railroads to expand a growing country's reach. In 1917, the same government reined in a rail network which had grown too big, too wasteful, and in some people's view, too powerful. As World War I raged in Europe, Washington took control of the private rail system for the public good. Federal regulators dictated what type of locomotives railroads could buy, when to run trains, and what they could charge. By the war's end in 1919, restrictions eased somewhat, but many roads had collapsed under the strain of the war effort and heavy regulation. The Great Depression that soon followed and stiff competition from cars and trucks closed the door on railroading's golden era. The downhill roll to power and profit became an uphill struggle for survival. Charismatic financiers and blustering rail bosses no longer had the town station platform to monopolize.
A new type of visionary was required to run the railroads efficiently and effectively in an environment of regulation and competition from other transportation modes.
From the end of World War I into the 1940s, these new leaders shook up railroad boardrooms from coast to coast. To decide the future, they examined the past and rediscovered what their lines did best. Along the Atlantic, America's first railroad, the Baltimore and Ohio, re-pioneered the art of premier passenger service.
The B&O was the old original franchise in America, the first formal steam-powered railway. Daniel Willard was its president for the first half of the 20th century, and he sought to protect the image and expand the values of the B&O. The B&O wasn't the most modern railroad, wasn't the fastest route to Chicago, but in Willard's era, it exemplified the best of the tradition of the American railway. The finest food, the best service, a link to a simpler, more elegant time, which only the B&O could credibly connect itself with.
At the same time in the Midwest, Ralph Budd and his Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad offered something new and exciting to travelers. He developed the first high-speed diesel-electric streamliner, which he hoped would attract people back to the rails.
Budd bought the idea that there was a great marquee value to having a snappy name train, and in May of 1934 introduces what later became the Pioneer Zephyr in a marvelous trip from Denver, Colorado to the great Chicago Railroad Exposition in the Windy City. This was the longest non-stop run in the history of railroad travel. Originally, he was looking for the last word in train travel, and perusing a dictionary, realized that the last word in the dictionary had absolutely no value. But his eye caught the word Zephyr, the god of the west winds, and this seemed to be the appropriate name for this new generation of inner-city rail passenger service.
On the West Coast, Angus MacDonald recognized that his Southern Pacific lines needed to somehow rekindle the public's imagination and push back competition from the automobile and the airplane. He created what have been described as the most beautiful trains in the world, the Daylights.
The Daylights captured the public imagination as the symbol of color and speed on the rails. Hollywood took notice too, and the Daylight trains are featured in innumerable productions and have remained a part of American popular culture. The one remaining Daylight steam locomotive today lives in Portland, where it is still sought after for motion picture production and is beloved by railroad enthusiasts.
The new Visionaries worked their magic until more convenient transportation seduced the traveling public and freight shippers away. Trains kept running, but by the 1960s, the train's thunder was muffled by jet engines and freeway roar. America's need for faster and more personal transportation had outgrown the services railroads could provide. Planes whisked people from city to city, and trucks carried packages from door to door. Trains were left with the important task of hauling coal and other bulk items, as well as a shrinking number of passengers with the creation of Amtrak. But the glory in railroading was gone. The rails fell victim to the modern industrial America they helped give birth to. Along the way, colorful visionaries played a crucial role in building the transportation framework of American democracy. Flagler, Hill, Gould, and the pioneers of the Gilded Age never had to compete with trucks, planes, and automobiles. How they would have battled such competition is a matter of speculation, but their efforts wouldn't have been ordinary.
Railroad leaders in the late 19th and early 20th century left an indelible impression on our nation. They were master builders. They made it possible for other modes of transportation, other inventions to improve the quality of life. But what's exciting about their stories is not only what they did, but who they were as individuals.
Their individual backgrounds and the paths they chose varied. What remains constant is that the visionaries of the Iron Road left a vibrant legacy and a marvel of transportation that the world still admires today.